This Startups with Stu episode was recorded live at one of my retreats. This one was down in the beautiful St. George, Utah, neighboring Zion National Park. Today's guest walked away from a prestigious legal career. He bet everything on escape rooms of all things and spent 7 years building his entertainment business, selling it all in 2022 across 9 transactions for a total of $26 million. Needless to say, he knows what it takes to sell a business. Today, he is the founder of Exit OS, helping business owners build companies that are actually sellable. He also has Fierce Health and Fierce Longevity because he's focused on GLP-1s, peptides, and longevity optimization. He rocks his own set of six-pack abs and shares a ton of knowledge about that stuff on Instagram. Go check him out. He is also the author of The Creator's Call, one of my favorites. You're gonna love one of the quotes he shares. Something about a cave, but you gotta tune in to hear it. It's so good, you guys. Don't miss this one.
Startups with Stu is a podcast for anyone living or wanting to live the startup life, either as a founder or a team member. Your host, Stuart Draper, was a 9-time Inc. 5000 honoree before age 40. This show dives deep into the exhilarating world of entrepreneurship with guests that are seeking advice from Stu for their startup or business owners that want to share their entrepreneurial journey. Listeners always walk away with actionable ideas of what to do to take their startup to the moon. Startup life can feel like a roller coaster ride, and with Startups with Stu, you're likely to turn your roller coaster ride into a rocket ship ride. Get ready to uncover the secrets to startup success from visionary founders and savvy investors who've transformed groundbreaking ideas into thriving ventures.
We have a special episode of Startups with Stu today because we are not in normal location. We are here in St. George, Utah for the 5th ever Startups with Stu retreat in the land of the Red Rock. We went on a fun hike this morning. It was a good time. Everyone give a cheer for the good time. Yeah. It was so fun. So, okay, I need that same level of excitement to welcome to the stage with me here, Mr. Raleigh Williams himself. Raleigh, give everyone the Reader's Digest on the entrepreneur's journey you went through.
Sure. So my name is Raleigh Williams. I graduated BYU. I went to BYU with Tyler Richards. That's my biggest claim to fame here. I thought that I was going to be a lawyer as soon as it was clear that my pro football career wasn't going to pass high school. And so I went to law school, and I thought that I was going to be a big corporate lawyer, following my dad's footsteps. That dream ended about 30 days into that job when I had a panic attack on my way to work, and my body very clearly told me that I had picked the wrong career.
Okay, wait. We're going to talk some health today. It's a Reader's Digest version,
okay,
so
with cut-ins.
Remember with some cut-ins, a good cut-in here, okay? That's good. Okay, for those who have never experienced a panic attack,
sure.
What did it feel like? What were the symptoms?
So I was at the gym. I would try to work out every single morning before I went to work, and I was at the gym, and I took enough pre-workout to sedate an elephant, like I normally do. But the interesting thing was, I thought that I was having a heart attack, and I actually called my wife and was like, "I think I'm having a heart attack," and she Googled my symptoms, which were basically racing heart. Body started to go numb. I just kind of laid down on the ground. And there was actually a part of me that kind of wanted it to be, a panic attack's like the worst thing for it to be because it just means that you're too lame to like live your life, you know? And so I was really hoping for a heart attack, but it turns out it was just a panic attack. And so I thought that I was just on the brink of passing out, really. And it got triggered because I was working out, and I got an email from my boss at the time, who was the head of mergers and acquisitions at the law firm that I was working at, and he was staffing me on a new deal, and I felt like I was already at my breaking point 30 days into the job. And I went to a very prestigious law school. I was supposed to be able to handle this type of thing, and I just hated the job, and I hated everyone that I worked for. I didn't respect any of the lawyers that I worked for. there was none of them that I wanted to be like when I grew up. It's very hierarchical, so you can see what your life is going to look like 10 years into the future. Most of them were fat, and I found them to be not very inspiring. And and so I was like, I hate this. I thought that I was working at this big, prestigious law firm to see these kingmakers, and it was going to be something like Suits, where you're like working with these sexy people doing sexy things, and it simply was not that. And so anyway, that's what the panic attack felt like, which to me was I actually felt a lot of shame about it. I felt like I felt like it was maybe I'm going from this kid version of me of doing a lot of school to living adult life, and for some reason I'm not cut out for adult life. But I also think, in addition to that, in school, if you have a bad class or a bad professor, there's always these terminal points. You take an exam, and then you can there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And this was my first real big job career where it was obvious that I'm on this treadmill. I'm not setting the pace of this treadmill, and it's unclear to me how I ever get off of this treadmill unless I find the courage to sidestep it in some way. And so the panic attack was kind of this wake-up moment for me of no one's coming to save you from this. There's no exam that gets you out of this thing, and you got to figure out how to save yourself and what that's going to look like.
And then you go, wait, isn't it harder to quit and go start a business than it is to just stay at the law firm? Like you're panicking, but actually it's easier where you are.
Yeah. Well, it's known. It's like a known discomfort versus a total unknown discomfort of stepping out into the unknown and having no clarity as to what. So I spent a little bit of time thinking that maybe I just needed to trade this prestigious job for a different prestigious job. So I started studying for the consulting interviews to maybe go work as a management consultant. I started studying for the GMAT. I wanted to just kind of go back into the cocoon of higher education, which I was pretty good at taking tests. And then I started to look at side hustles, and I tried a bunch of things. None of them worked. I tried to do a faceless Instagram account. I tried to buy tax liens. I became a real estate agent. I was just desperately grasping for anything where I felt like I could generate any sort of momentum, where I could feel some control of my economic situation and not work in the grinder that was the law firm that I was working for. Mm-hmm. And with every additional failure, it became a little bit more desperate for me of like, why, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to find myself getting out of this thing? And ultimately, about 7 months after that panic attack, while I was still working at that law firm job, my brother sent me an article from MarketWatch that was called The Unbelievably Lucrative Business of Escape Rooms. And it kind of talked about this new trend that had existed in Europe that was coming over to the United States, and these escape room businesses that were supposedly making money hand over fist. I never heard, the idea of someone getting paid to get locked into a room to then try to figure out how to get out did not make a ton of sense to me. But I figured if it was a trend, I was just at a state of openness of I will try anything that is not practicing law. And so that night I went with a buddy that was working at KPMG, and we did an escape room, and it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was a zombie room, so there was a live actor in there, and it was kind of intense. And I counted how many heads were there in the escape room, and just doing back of the napkin math, kind of figured that they were making decent money and that it wasn't that complex of a business to build. And so that kind of started me on the path of 3 months after that, I put in my 2 weeks notice at my law firm and moved my wife and my child back to Utah to open up Alcatraz escape games there in Draper. And then I ultimately teamed up with my brother, who had a trampoline park that I'd started before law school that I sold to him, and I bought back into it. And for the next 7 years, we built Williams Entertainment Group, which was escape rooms, trampoline parks, and a couple other entertainment concepts. And then in 2022, we ended up selling all of the businesses in 9 transactions for $26 million, including the real estate. And I had some partners and debt, and so that all did not go into my pocket, but I made enough to go to Sizzler at the end of the day.
Yeah, you could take the family to dinner
and get some mashed potatoes. But so anyway, that's how it all kind of ended.
Okay. So in the journey, where were the like quick wins that got you going like this is going to work?
Oh, that's a good question.
Did you invent like your own escape game? Like,
Yeah.
It was your own game.
Yeah, we had.
You went and played other escape room games and saw what they were doing.
When we started, because I had no idea how to build escape rooms at all. I had no We had two ideas basically. Our hypothesis was I had played enough escape rooms, and I found that the ones that I really enjoyed had actors in it. That was fun for me, and also they had spent some money on production value. So our hypothesis, which is, I mean, even to call it a hypothesis makes it sound sexier than what we were thinking of it at the time. This would be dope if, that was basically how we thought of it, was let's add actors to it so there's some intensity to the games. Let's shade a little bit darker themes. So we had like zombie ones, we had like this like haunted poltergeist one. And when we started, since we didn't know how to build the rooms or like have the puzzle sequence, I actually hit up a escape room, one of the best escape rooms in Europe, and asked them if I could simply license all of their games for like $5,000, and they're like, free $5,000, sure, license, don't know what that is, but whatever, we'll do it. And so I paid them to get like the sequence of all their games, and like we ended up using not that many of them, but it was just something that gave us the confidence to kind of copy and paste from somewhere else that it was working. So I'd say one thing that was helpful for me, and I've talked to some of you, at that point in my life, I didn't consider myself a very creative person, and I would say that I'm not creative, I'm a lawyer, I can copy other people. And that in and of itself, I think entrepreneurship is an act of creation, and a lot of times if you're coming from a more maybe high education or a more corporatized past, you don't think of yourself as creative, and a lot of times you're probably more creative than you think that you are. And so my creative solution was simply to play a little bit of the geography game of let me find somewhere where this is working and let me bring it to this other place where it doesn't exist yet. And so it didn't work. I didn't take the full business, but I took the important part of the business that I wanted, which was kind of how the games flowed together as just a starting point, as opposed to just looking at a blank page and trying to divine from God, what this escape room is supposed to look like. And so that was kind of our entry point into getting started.
And then like you opened the doors, but why did people just like come right away? How did you get people in the doors?
We picked the first location was right off of I-15, and so there was kind of built-in traffic in Utah. That was the first thing. I had partnered with my brother who had Airborne Trampoline Park, and so we had some built-in customer segments and email addresses from the people who signed the waivers at Airborne. And so those, and also it was just, I've found, and again, and we'll get into the business that I run right now, and I've had 25 aborted children of entrepreneurship, like aborted ideas, we'll say, not aborted children. I've had 25 failures that we won't talk about, and I would say one of the key themes has been I just happened to ride a trending wave that I had no control over the size of it, but escape rooms were it just hit a trend that, and I think in entrepreneurship, a lot of times you sit in a room by yourself with a blank sheet of paper and you kind of think of, what you want to do, and the wave that you're riding, you have no control over the height of it. But if you just find yourself on a trend that is happening outside of you trying to generate the demand, you'll have a much easier time. Even within the entertainment business, the escape room business did very well, and so then I started to think of myself as a very smart guy. And so then I wanted to start this additional trend called Labyrinth Reality Games that was in London. And I was like, I'm a smart guy. Look how genius I am. I have the Midas touch. And then entrepreneurship is a great way of smacking you in the face when you start thinking that. And so I tried to start this new concept that didn't do nearly as well as the concept of just riding the wave of what the market already expected and wanted. Mm-hmm. And so just following, demand, if you have to be the one that generates the demand in your business and try to explain to people why they want it or try to convince them that they want the thing, you're starting at a very disadvantaged position. That if you simply give the people what they want, and I would have never come up with the escape room concept by myself in a million years, but because I saw it working elsewhere, I simply filled the demand that already existed, and that made it a lot easier.
Nice. I think that's a key takeaway, guys. If you haven't thought about that some more, ask yourself in your business, are you serving an existing demand, or are you having to create that demand? And how do you identify that? Have you talked to the right people that can help you identify it? For you, you identified it because MarketWatch told you. Mm-hmm. That was the original identification.
Yeah.
Also, along the lines of going to Europe, I went to Asia, and I remember I was already like gung-ho on Stu Kent, and Stu Kent was like 4 years old and going places, and it was like, I have to stay focused and keep doing the thing that I know is gonna win and win big. But I left Asia going, I could bring 15 different things back to the US and start a new business from this. Mm-hmm. So if you're an aspiring founder that's like looking for that aha, go on a trip to Europe or Asia. India was another place I went where I was like blown away by how many different things you could bring.
Yeah, like back in the day when I was doing brick and mortar entertainment and I was looking for new concepts, it just so happened to be the case that had I been looking at TripAdvisor 5 years prior, I would have been able to, if you go, especially if you go to the big kind of tourist cities on TripAdvisor, you can kind of see the front edge. And every if you're in skincare, Korea tends to be the place where like it's on the avant-garde of the boundary of what is coming. And so you can kind of see what's coming down the pike if you just spend a little bit of time and getting a sense of where that's happening. And so back when I was looking to add new entertainment concepts to Williams Entertainment Group, I spent a lot of time on TripAdvisor seeing, basically what are low cost, low risk concepts that tend to be out kicking their coverage in terms of the demand that is generated for how simple the idea is. And escape rooms happen to be that. And had I been looking on TripAdvisor back at the time, I could have found it faster. But yeah, there's a lot of geographical arbitrage of things that are advancing quicker in other places that you can just bring to your spot. And trampoline parks were the same thing. In St. Louis, there were outside trampoline parks in the 1960s as a concept that was very popular. And then in the early 2000s, they started to pop up in Utah and other places. And I always try to look for. You can get yourself into a lot of trouble looking at people that have executed in an expensive way and it has done well, mm-hmm. but things that have been done very cheaply that are doing very well relative to their cost, they're touching on a demand that hasn't been met super well just yet, and you can kind of play around in that sandbox a little bit to see how you can iterate on that to meet that same demand, the same job to be done that, because when you go to an escape room, you're hiring the escape room for it to fulfill a job for you for some time, whether that's connection on a date or whether
making
that's corporate team builder, making you feel,
or making you have fun.
Yeah.
Or both.
And so meeting that same job to be done in a different iteration can be a helpful framing to kind of mine ideas if you're at the idea stage.
Yeah. So we have a room full of entrepreneurs. They're looking to make money in their business while they're working on their business. Did you focus on the dividends and the salary you were taking from the business so much as just growing the value of it? Was the plan originally, we're going to build this and sell it?
The plan was, is this not practicing law, and can I pay for food tonight?
Like anything but what I'm doing kind of stage.
Yeah, I didn't. I had no delusions of grandeur. It was simply that. It was I got to do something. If I don't have to wear a suit and to work every day, and I can live the rest of my life providing for me and my family, hell yeah. That was as complicated as it was. As a starting point, and then as the opportunity of the escape room thing came into being, we spent a lot of time. We wasted a lot of time building models, and what is this going to be, and how many locations, and throughput, and capacity, all that stuff. None of that stuff was ever worth it. I mean, it's a helpful exercise to think through what is this going to cost, and what is the potential opportunity. None of it, we were never anywhere close in terms of projections of what we thought it could be. And then I didn't take, really, I think every business has one or two drivers that tend to really drive the revenue and what is possible. In the escape room business, the interesting thing was, maybe it's not that interesting, but the real driver ended up being how many rooms are available. So it was simply a function of we needed to build out the location, and so when we had one room, we were at 30 or 40% capacity, and it felt like a waste of money to build a second room when we weren't full capacity on this first room. But it was simply the case that every time we built a new room, every room ended up being at 30 or 40% capacity, and so just how many rooms can you get in this stupid location? And as many rooms as you can do, our revenue was directly correlated with the rooms that we had available, which didn't make sense. I mean, looking back, it's really because in the entertainment business, you're really in the weekend, you're really in the Thursday, times, Friday, right? Saturday, partially Sunday business. And so what is the biggest bucket that you can put out while it's raining money on those days, and how can you capture the most of it? And you're always going to be dead Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Whether you have one room or 7 rooms, they're simply not going to be used. And so once we figured that out, which took us longer than we thought, then it became a function of doing the rooms. And then the other big thing that we did was, again, we built a room that was going to be like a magic room, and I just took the chance that my partners didn't like this idea because we were basically co-opting Harry Potter IP in violation of their IP rights. My thought was, we're going to do it for as long as they're going to catch us, and then they're going to send us a cease and desist letter, and then we'll stop doing it. And so we ran that for 4 years before Warner Brothers found it, and we got a cease and desist letter. And that was always our most popular room by far, of just co-opting. And again, it goes into the tacking into where the waves of demand already exist and writing those waves as best you can, not trying to generate them from scratch. And so it was called Horcrux Hysteria, and there was all these Harry Potter references within the room. And then Warner Brothers sent us a cease and desist, and then we turned it to Wizard Hysteria. But everyone, we had 4 years in Utah of doing this and Harry Potter has its own group of sycophants and crazies that love to do their thing, and so they would come and do the room. And so again, that was another little hack that we had found, is if we can tie into IP that already exists and hook our rooms into something a concept that people want to experience the environment of the concept anyway, then that tended to drive demand.
So you're a Harry Potter sycophant?
No.
Oh yeah, not. I just created the room, but I'm not.
I paid a guy. I went to law school with a guy that was like head of a Harry Potter thing, and so I paid him $3,000 to build all of the room stuff. And so I, yeah.
You just knew there was a.
I knew
a
that
market
there. Yeah,
for it.
I knew that there was a market for it, and I did. Well, I guessed that there was a market. I didn't know that there was a market for it, but I guessed that. Star Wars, there are just certain movie IPs that people tend to resonate with deeply, and if they can experience that in the environment that feels somewhat similar to the IP, then they'll pay more for it,
Did you ever bother to get on the Inc. 5000 list, to try to apply for it or anything? Cool. What about as far as when was the first time people started trying to sell you on the idea of you selling your business? People came to you, right? I'm guessing.
No. I had moved. I was building 2 new locations in Texas, and I had an operating partner that had stayed in Utah, and he decided that he wanted to get a new job, and I was always scared of. I was always scared of the timing of when the rooms were going to need reinvestment. Like what the time frame is that these things last. And so when he wanted to go get a new job doing something else, I bought him out of the business. And then I wanted to sell. When you go and sell a business, one of the big questions is what is the ongoing capital expenditures required to keep the business going? And I simply wanted to sell before my financial statement showed that I needed to flip these rooms every so often. And so I was ready. Again, I had gotten into the escape room and the trampoline park business not out of any passion for that as a concept in and of itself, but as it was just simply not practicing law. And I felt like I'd been in that business for 5 years, and I couldn't see myself doing it for another 5 years. And I tell entrepreneurs this: once the idea of growth, actually, if you read the Art of War, where Sun Tzu talks about flaws that generals have, one of the flaws that a general has is if there's an opportunity to advance and the general isn't taking it, it's because the general is too tired and needs to be executed, which we don't do that these days. But I could feel that in myself, that there was opportunity for growth in the business, and I wasn't taking it out of any strategic reason other than I just didn't have it within me anymore. I didn't have the desire to continue to sign personal guarantees, to build out these big, in the full version of what we were building, there were 55,000 square foot entertainment parks with trampoline parks and escape rooms, axe throwing, and a full bar and everything else. And despite opportunity existing within the business, I didn't want to do it anymore, and I felt like the P&L was going to show at some point my lackluster energy that I was placing in it, and I simply wanted to get out before it became evident in the numbers that I was checked out of the business, because I had kind of checked out.
So you have multiple businesses. One of the ones you're working on is Exit OS.
Yeah.
And so you're all about exits. You know about what it takes, because you sold them it was a big business, one business, but you sold it over the course of 9 transactions because they were real estate deals. They were different, right?
Yeah.
But and I think a lot of folks here go, maybe I'll sell my business someday, maybe I'll keep it. But for you, what were the right steps that you took to help get the deals done? High level, you don't have to give us
I think high level. If you're ever thinking about selling your business, when we start with a business, we tend to go over the 4 key levers that drive enterprise value to an acquirer, and these are acquirers in kind of the SMB business, the small medium-sized businesses, not venture deals where you're dealing with big private equity firms. Although it applies, which is you need to have a positive growth rate year over year. Your business needs to be growing. No one wants to buy. If businesses are sold basically on at least the types of businesses that we interact with, and the type of business that most of y'all have, I presume. It's what does the last 12 months of business look like? That's called the trailing 12 months, TTM. What does that look like from a profitability and a revenue standpoint? What goes to the bottom line? And then we're going to apply some multiple to that. And usually in the SMB world, it's a 2 in the worst case, up to a 6 or a 7, depending on the type of business. And so if it made $100,000 last year in net profit, and you get a 4x multiple, you're selling for $400,000, rough math. And the 4 key drivers that really determine what the multiple is that you will get for the business are: what is the growth rate of the business? A business that's growing faster over a business that's growing slower sells for a higher multiple. What do the operations of the business look like? And the big question on the operations is how included is the founder and the team that is going to get the paycheck to leave? How much are they doing operationally? Because if I'm going to write you a check for $5 million and you're going to go to Mexico and you are deeply involved in the fulfillment or the sales mechanisms, or if you're deeply involved in the operational apparatus of the business, it will drag the multiple down to a lower number. The accounting of the business, are you playing tax games and trying to get your tax number? Do you have clean books, or are you commingling things? And then the defensibility of the business. So do you have IP that is unique? How difficult would it be for a competitor to come and enter into this market? What do you have that builds you somewhat of a moat around the business, and how can we And so when somebody hires Exit OS, we are looking at those 4 things, and all of those 4 things are, the numbers are the numbers, and there's not much you can do, but they're really stories that you're trying to tell to buyers to get them excited about why it's defensible, why it's growing, or why it didn't grow, and how you can grow it. And so we try to get those stories right when we're taking something to market. And so when you are looking to exit, it's the big problem that founders make is they are almost always too involved in the business, and they have not relinquished the business to a team that can run it without them. And so it's usually a function of hiring new people and cleaning up processes and building a growth narrative to take it to market. That's kind of like, I don't know, what was the question you asked me? I went to that's my spiel that I usually give on that. I don't know if I even answered the
That's great. No, you're answering the question. It's all about what are the right steps that you're taking to get to a place where you can have a good run with your exit.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think you've nailed it there. So as far as in Exit OS can represent a business then, is that right?
Yeah, we take them to market. Usually you have to be doing at least $1 million in profit. So $1 million and up, and it tends to be blue collar, like we don't do software businesses, or we do kind of blue collar, brick and mortar, simple businesses.
Awesome. You mentioned multiples, the multiples that we're always talking about at $100,000, and then you get a 4 times multiple off the profits of that $100,000 is what you're going to get. That depends very much on the type of business you're in, what your growth rates look like, what your contracts look like, what other businesses similar to yours are trading for is going to determine that. And I believe that founders early should know that number. If you're raising money, usually you learn that number and know it. But if you're not raising money, often you don't. And because you're not worried about getting investor money, you often overlook some things that will really impact the type of business you're going to go run. So what I would say is a key takeaway is if you are paying yourself $100,000 and what you can get for selling your business is 4 times that $100,000, now you know that whenever you finish all your years, you're going to have 4 times what your take home was one time, and then it'll be over, right? Is that a business that you want to retire with? Is that a business you can retire with? If not, how long do you want to run that business before you decide to sell and build something that can give you a better payday later, right? Or what else are you going to do with your business to change that end trajectory? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think on the selling side, I think a lot of times founders, and Stu and I were talking about this morning, a lot of times you get started with a narrative about why you're doing this business that you're doing, and then your life goes on, and 5 years later you wake up and you realize that you still have the same story. You're still telling yourself and you're still telling your friends why you're doing this business, and it hasn't really changed that much from what you were saying 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's helpful to simply just pause and ask yourself the question, knowing what I now know about this business that I did not know 5 years ago, would I start this same business from scratch today that I started 5 years ago? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, because you love it, and you still have gas in the tank and you still want to keep going, I think that's beautiful, keep going. For me, the answer was, within the business that I was in, 2 things happened that were massive. One, COVID happened, which changed the narrative. We always had this narrative in the entertainment business that if there were, we were still, 2008 was the last thing that had really imploded the economy. And so we had an 2008 narrative about how our business was recession resistant, which we were. We just happened to not be pandemic resistant, mm-hmm. which happened to be the thing that we dealt with. And then the other thing that had changed from like 2017 to 2020 is there were a couple big players, Urban Air, Circus Tricks. If you guys are seeing this, F you guys.
The Circus Tricks guys?
Yeah, screw all you guys. And
hi, Zane Hansen. He's a friend of mine that was at Circus
Tim,
Tricks.
what's up, dude?
Case Lawrence came in one of my next episodes.
You're good, man. No, Case is actually, he's a good dude. But they had moved deeply. They had started as they were corporate-owned stores at the beginning, and then they moved into franchising. And so the corporate entity did not give two cares about flooding markets and building a lot of demand, building a lot of competition in markets because they were selling it to franchisees. And so there were new headwinds in the business in terms of competition. Also, the cost of the business in terms of insurance costs. Insurance was getting harder and harder to get. So we'd gotten into the business because it was supposed to be easy money. And as time had gone on, it was no longer the easy money that we felt like it was. I could just feel headwinds in the business that didn't exist when I got into the business. And I simply wanted to get out before those headwinds became apparent. Once the headwinds get baked into your profit and loss statements, into your TTM, then you're stuck fixing the stupid thing. And I didn't want to go on a house rehab equivalent of my business because I already knew I didn't have the gas in the tank to do it. And so I wanted to get out when I did.
Okay, let's shift gears. We saved the best for last, folks, all right?
We did?
The business
That's
stuff.
on my best. That's
No, there's a lot more to
I got
Raleigh
nothing else.
than the business side of Raleigh, okay? So Raleigh Williams is not just someone who has built and sold businesses and read a lot of cool books and shared a lot of philosophy and become a therapist on the side.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But Raleigh also has studied health a lot. His wife went through cancer, and
Twice, yeah.
you went through a whole studying process. But one thing I've noticed with a lot of founders that go through a big paydays, they get more time on their hands, and they start studying what they're going to do to optimize their life and their health. And you talked about benching over 300 pounds, and you're weighing $150. So I'm impressed.
I talk about that daily with any conversation. I like everyone that I interact with.
Just so you know, my PR is
yeah.
3.
That's what I lead with in every conversation that I have.
Okay, so let's. But
and I pay Stu to say it for me sometimes
yeah,
in settings like
hey,
this.
Stu, if you don't mind, just throw it in there.
I mean, it's 340 technically, but we'll say over 300.
So, okay, you're benching a lot of weight. You're staying really healthy. One of your businesses that you have, besides the Exit OS, is also the Fierce.
Yeah.
What is it? Fierce what?
Fierce. Fierce Health is GLP-1s and the conventional FDA-approved medicines, kind of a cash pay telehealth business, and then Fierce Longevity is a peptide and hormone business that is currently online, and then I'm building my first clinic in Draper, actually in that same right next door to where I started Alcatraz, and doing peptide clinics. So two businesses that are separate businesses for regulatory risk reasons. One, the Fierce Health one is licensed nurse practitioners with compounding pharmacies, and we'll ship it to all 50 states. And then Fierce Longevity is a little bit in what is currently a gray area. And again, this speaks to you get to pick the wave that you ride, but you don't get to pick how big or how small that wave becomes. And so peptides and Fierce Health were always these businesses that I put no time into, I put no investment into, because it felt like it was in this regulatorily gray area, and it felt like I was always to build infrastructure like I would in a typical business. It felt like I would potentially vest on a very sandy foundation, and the wave that is the FDA or this whole medical apparatus that felt very complex to me that I never really wanted to wrap my head around. I just viewed it as a cash business that was kind of nice, but despite my lack of energy, it grew naturally, without any time on my own, while I was spending a lot of time trying to force these new creative ideas that I thought were super special and super awesome that no one happened to care about. And so we got into that kind of by happenstance 3.5 years ago on the Fierce Health side. And while we were doing Fierce Health, my wife had 2 bouts of cancer, and so it kind of forced us into understanding the health system, navigating it, trying to really just save her life. And so it got me comfortable enough to know that medical professionals don't know anything. And so this other side of Fierce Longevity that kind of sits outside of the medical system right now, I think where the puck is going is what is currently sits in the regulatorily gray will trend more and more into the regulatorily white. And so we do both of those. We do both of those things because I think, health is obviously a massive market, and we just happen to kind of get into the market by happenstance.
It's funny how some founders, it's very happenstance, others it's like very planned and exactly what they wanted to do with their whole life, and they just knew it. It's cool to hear that part of your story. One of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is because I'm blown away by how our society has very quietly started into this world of peptides, and a lot of people are benefiting from it without sharing what they're doing that's causing them to all of a sudden get fit and in shape again. And oh my gosh, you've worked out for 20 years, but only now do you have abs. What have you done? And they're like, oh, I've been paying the price. Well, okay, but there's tricks here. There's things that people are doing, and the GLP-1s is a key one, but also there's others. Tell us about some of like your favorites and why you like them.
Yeah, I'll give you the high level, and I am by no means an expert in this business. I have people that work in the business, my CEO, who, if any of y'all want to have a consult with him, like I just texted him before this, he's more than happy to do it. He is the I'm 36, he's 29, so I make sure that I have him inject something, see if he turns fluorescent green over a month or two, and if he doesn't, then I'll take it. And so the high level of peptides, what peptides are is you have a protein. A protein is made up of amino acids, and then amino acids are made up of peptides. So peptides are kind of like the building blocks of amino acids, and then proteins are kind of like the most complex version of it. Peptides are, at least the peptides that we sell, are naturally occurring in your body, and they just have your body do different things. The things that I have found to be the most helpful, and the peptides that I take, probably the one that I would be hard-pressed to ever get off of is retatrutide, which is a GLP-3. So what it does is it just triggers satiety. You feel full, and it also makes your body more sensitive to ATP. I got a C in biology at BYU, so ATP is like the energy units that your body focuses on. And so your body becomes more efficient with energy. It requires less ATP to do the exact same amount of stuff as what it does before. So you become more sensitive, and your body becomes more efficient in the way that it does things. So retatrutide has helped me overcome my addiction to Haagen-Dazs, which is not good for them. It's also, some of the GLPs have been used in like addiction centers. It kind of resets your dopamine centers, and so even in addiction recovery, it's kind of helped. You've probably heard of semaglutide or Ozempic or Mounjaro or tirzepatide. Those have been on the market for a couple of years, and then retatrutide is this one that's kind of coming down the pike that will be approved in the same way that semaglutide and tirzepatide were approved a couple years ago. So retatrutide is one. Another one is it's called BPC 157. Sometimes they'll pair it with multiple peptides, and it'll be called like a Wolverine. They all have retarded. I don't know if I can say that anymore.
The Wolverine stack.
Is it retarded? Can you not say retarded anymore? I'm in an office most of the time, so I don't know what's allowed to say. It's dumb. It's
coming back.
It's dumb. It's dumb. Delete that from wherever these screens are.
Say it again.
Yeah. I'll be the tip of the spear on that. That's great. They all have these crazy names that are like R2D2 names, and so BPC 157.
The Wolverine stack.
Or Wolverine. It's all dumb, but. That helps like recovery on joints, and so I've actually noticed sometimes I'll have lower back issues, and so it's helped with that. But
I have a friend, by the way, who just had a shoulder injury. The doctor said like 50-50, you're going to have surgery, and he did the Wolverine stack, which is a C 175, 157.
Yeah,
there's a reason why they give it a different name, because the acronyms are crazy.
Compounds, yeah.
But yeah, he injected himself with that stuff in his shoulder, and bam.
And I'll say in founder world, although I think Brian Johnson and there are other people that have kind of I don't know that I'm going out on a huge.
Ignore that. It didn't happen.
I'm not going on a huge limb here, but I will say, as I look back on my career, like the panic attack at the law firm, it was interesting that my body knew that I was in a place that I shouldn't be before I consciously knew that I was in a place that I shouldn't be. When my wife at the time got cancer, that happened after I sold that business. And, the Confucius saying is like a healthy man wants 1,000 things and a sick man only wants one. And so I think there's this, when you're heavily involved in a heavy business, whether it's venture funded or, and you put yourself on this crucible path because you're hoping that the economic ends will justify the means of the work, it's so easy to put your body to the side and to not focus on it. Again, I think that's probably how it was 10, 15 years ago when Tyler and I were starting in this. And I think now it's not nearly that same way. With biohacking and all this other thing. But I think, and I've talked to some founders and some people here, like your body has a certain wisdom to it and it can tell you a lot of things that consciously you're not susceptible to. And so the investment in your body pays dividends, and not allowing the body be the thing that you lay at the sacrificial altar for some economic end, I think is important. And I think it's important just in and of itself, but I also think that you become a better founder, parent. There's no experience that you're going to go through on this earth that you will not experience within your body. That's the crazy, nothing too crazy there. And so investing in it tends to be, there's a certain subset of founders and entrepreneurs where it just is the last place to focus on and the last place to think about. And I have yet to experience someone who doesn't move their body up in some way. That doesn't mean peptides. It means walking 10,000 steps or drinking more water. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, peptide or otherwise. But I think there are very few body health longevity things that don't pay dividends that are worth investing in.
Yeah. So with your own body. You were in a position where you're building this trampoline park and you're buying setting another lease for another location for your escape rooms. You're working what,
18.
A ton of hours a day?
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, I mean, I had newborn, 2017, newborn twins that don't sleep. I know somebody's pregnant with twins. They don't sleep, so goodbye. Goodbye to sleep. I mean, I was, I had always worked out, I'd always worked out 6 days a week for the past 15 years, but my diet was always something that I always just ate whatever I wanted to eat. And so for me in the past 6-8 months, just getting my diet under control with GLPs and just resetting my my relationship with food, which peptides have helped me do, have been I'm in better shape now than I've been ever. I'm 36 right now, and I think peptides have been a huge part of that.
Okay, awesome. So take note, if you haven't looked into it, it's worth checking out. You can go to Fierce Longevity online, and check it out. The book, Collector's Call.
Collector's Call, yeah, it's a debt collector.
Creator's
Call. Creator's Call.
Creator's Call, forgive me for that. And
Call collect, yeah.
In closing, and Tyler, I need to connect with you because we're gonna push things a little bit. You have a saying on your wall in your office. Mm-hmm. I loved it from our last episode. Let's end with you sharing that cool quote.
So the quote is, and this is the quote that I live by, it's been the biggest impact to me, and it is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek." And all of us, I think, have caves. A cave is an unknown thing. It's it's scary down there. There are dragons down there. I carry with me a little rock dragon to remind myself to simply face the thing that I am most scared to face. And on the other side of your fears, whatever they are, sits everything that you've ever wanted. Your deepest desire, and this is the case in mythology, scripture, any story that any of us find impactful, every hero's journey, it is the thing you most want sits on the other side of the thing that you most fear. And if you simply face that fear head on, honorably, and keep your heart and keep your heart in the process and listen to your heart. You know, heart is the root word of courage. That word courage comes from the Latin word cor, which means your heart. And so courage is the showing of your heart. And if you go into those caves, whether that's a conversation that you've been avoiding or whatever it is, the thing that you most fear tends to be the thing that guards the thing that you most want. And so I keep that quote with me to remind me that if I'm scared, that means that I'm on the right path, and to move forward anyway. And you will find if you live, what I've found is that as I've lived my life that way as best I could, doors will open where previously there were only walls, and the door will only open for you if you find that courage to do it. And you will wake up one day and find yourself doing everything that you ever hoped to do.
There you go, folks. Give it up for Raleigh. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for joining me on Startups with Stu. We have big goals to help millions of entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to share it with someone else that needs to hear it, or leave a review. Remember, success is within reach for those who dare to dream big and take action. Until next time, keep pushing forward on your entrepreneurial journey.